I had a bad feeling about the day the instant I spotted him lounging in his chair, looking like a bargain bin Bond villain spinning a flimsy pen between his fingers. The blinds were half drawn, the fluorescent light overhead let out a faint buzz, and that smug half-smile on his face seemed to be daring me to lean across the desk and wipe it off. He didn't offer me a seat, just tilted his chin up like he was granting me the privilege of being there. Then, in that perfectly condescending tone he'd polished over the last 6 months, he said, "I need you to delete your files. They belong to the company now." For a moment, I thought I must have heard him wrong. Delete my files? This wasn't some messy desktop littered with cat memes and vacation snapshots. It was 12 years of payroll infrastructure, built, secured, and maintained with precision. The keys, schedules, compliance protocols, all of it. So I asked slowly and clearly, "You're telling me to delete the payroll system files?" He gave this little dismissive laugh, the kind people give when they think you're exaggerating. "They're not payroll system files. Just old stuff, clutter. We're shifting to a team-owned approach so no single person controls it. You've been keeping too much to yourself." There it was, the subtle dig meant to paint me as protective, outdated, the bottleneck in his bright new vision of collaboration. I know a lot of you probably hear this and nod, because you've been in the same spot. Some fresh manager storms in, flexing just enough authority to mess things up, demanding control over what they don't even understand. And if you're one of those listening who still hasn't subscribed, maybe do it. Helps keep us going with the stories that make your coffee taste better. Back in that office, I could feel my neck heating up, but I kept my face still. I've learned the calmest person in the room usually walks away winning. "Just to confirm," I said, meeting his eyes, "you want me to delete the file?" He smirked, nodded, and started flipping through a printed report like we were done here. What he didn't know, what he couldn't know, was that with that single nod, he'd just signed the end of his career. The file wasn't just any file. It was the file, holding the encrypted master key that allowed the entire payroll system to function. Without it, there'd be no transactions, no direct deposits, no checks. And because of compliance rules and security measures, there was no instant recovery, no cloud backup. That key lived only on a secure local drive, refreshed every few years, and I was the only one authorized to handle it. I thought about every time he'd waved off my maintenance notices, ignored my warnings during updates, or stolen credit for processes I'd painstakingly designed. This wasn't just arrogance, it was dangerous ignorance dressed in a cheap suit. So I smiled, a smile he probably mistook for agreement, and said, "All right." I walked out without another word. The trip back to my desk felt slow, each step heavy but my mind crystal clear. I sat, typed a few commands, and soon the cursor blinked, waiting for my confirmation. I paused, not in doubt but to savor it, then entered the final command. One press of return, and the file was gone. 12 years of intricate, hidden machinery erased in seconds. I logged the action exactly as it happened. File deleted per manager instruction. No extra commentary, no emotion, just facts. The kind of record that would be read later, and hang in the air like a noose. From across the floor, I heard him joking with another manager about clearing out old clutter, before heading off for his mid-morning coffee. I leaned back in my chair, shut the laptop, and let the low buzz of the office seep in. The first domino was down. The rest would tumble soon enough. There was no dramatic pause, no inner tug-of-war, no swelling soundtrack. I'd been keeping a mental ledger for years. Every slight stored away like a bent nail in an old coffee tin, ready for the day I'd need to forge something sharp. He just dropped the lumber in my lap. My mind drifted back to his first week. The man couldn't tell a secure access protocol from a latte order. Yet within days, he was standing in front of the whole department boasting about optimizing payroll operations, with changes that were nothing more than my work renamed. A month later, in a meeting with the CFO, he dismissed my documentation as needless paranoia, the same documentation that had saved us during a banking outage. Just last quarter, he left me out of a meeting with the new benefits vendor, then emailed me afterward asking for a quick favor, setting up their secure data exchange. Those weren't just annoyances, they were glowing signs flashing. He doesn't value the systems, the people, or the stakes. And now he was telling me to erase the one file that kept payroll running like clockwork. I kept my expression neutral. You want me to delete the file? I asked again, my voice flat enough to slip past his ego unnoticed. He nodded lazily, the kind of half-aware gesture people give when they think you're asking something obvious. Didn't even look up from whatever quarterly report he was pretending to read. That was it, the quiet snap of a trap closing. I wasn't just obeying an order. I was putting his name on it in ink. There's a shift when you move from defense to knowing you've got the blade. It's not adrenaline, it's colder. It's the stillness that comes when you can see the chain of events in perfect order, knowing you could walk away but won't. I thought about the audit logs, the compliance checks, the legal boundaries, about how our system wasn't a Word document you could fish out of the trash. That master key file was stored on a secure local drive for a reason. To meet federal and state payroll laws. No cloud copy, no hidden backup. It could only be recreated with my written sign-off, and only after a weeks-long verification process. That was deliberate. My design. And he wanted it gone. I rested a hand lightly on the edge of his desk and gave the smallest nod. All right, I said, as if we were talking about tossing outdated memos. I walked out without waiting. There was nothing more for him to say. Passing a couple of coworkers, I got the polite, tight smiles of people steering clear of a boss's bad mood. They had no idea they'd be feeling the shockwaves before the day was out. Sliding into my chair, I opened the secure access console and looked at the directory holding the file. My fingers hovered, not in doubt, but in acknowledgement. This wasn't just deletion. It was the hinge point in a long-running game. I'd been called guilty of over-engineering security before. That's what people say when they can't imagine consequences beyond next Friday's happy hour. Payroll isn't about happy hours. It's about mortgages, car payments, the lights staying on for 2,000 families. Every lock I'd built had been tested and retested until the system was sealed tight. And the master key was its heartbeat. One last glance toward his now empty office. Chair turned halfway as if he'd left mid-thought, and I made it official. The cursor blinked like it knew what was coming. One command, and the clock would start. The man who thought he was seizing control had just placed it in my hands. The shock was gone. Cold precision had taken over. There was no going back, and I had no desire to. The order was his, the fallout would be his, and the silence when payroll failed tomorrow. That would be mine. The file sat there like an unmarked light switch in a forgotten corridor. Plain, unimpressive, yet the only thing keeping the building lit. No flashy name, no obvious hint. Just a meaningless string of characters only I could decode. By design. Payroll encryption keys are safes within safes. You don't name the final combo, top secret payroll key, unless you're doing hackers a favor. I opened it in the secure console, green bars flickering. Access granted to a part of the system most never see. My hands moved without pause. 12 years of muscle memory guiding every step. Select. Confirm. Authenticate. No fireworks when you erase something like this. Just a prompt asking for confirmation, and then a quiet, blinking cursor. Real damage doesn't announce itself. I wrote the audit log entry clean and spare. Deleted payroll master encryption file per manager instruction. No spin, no adjectives. That line would sit there forever, waiting to be read aloud in a boardroom with no doubt whose order it was. I verified the deletion, not out of uncertainty, but to savor the certainty. The folder was bare. The pulse was gone. Without that single file, the payroll platform was a sealed safe without a key. No salaries processed, no transfers in or out, for 2,000 employees or anyone else. I leaned back for a moment, letting my gaze drift across the office. The clack of keyboards, the steady drone of the printer, the faint rattle from the ancient HVAC. Everything felt oddly distant, as if I were watching it all through glass. People went about their Tuesday routines. Coffee cups in hand, Slack chats buzzing, laughter spilling from the break room. Oblivious that the detonator had just been pressed beneath the company's financial engine. The satisfaction that settled over me wasn't smug or adrenaline-laced. It was the quiet certainty you feel after tightening the final bolt on a machine you know will run exactly as designed. I'd carried out his directive to the letter, logged every step, and left no trace, except the one that pointed squarely at him. Locking my terminal, I slipped my phone from my pocket, snapping a quick picture of the audit log. Not out of necessity, but because I liked having my own private proof, a bit of insurance. A coworker passed by, asking if I was breaking for lunch early. I smiled. Not yet. Somewhere between his office and the break room, my boss was walking around thinking he'd just asserted control over a stubborn subordinate. In truth, he'd ordered the severing of his own brake lines, and I had done it with surgical precision. Sitting back down, I opened my email, attached the audit log, and sent it to my personal address with a bland subject line, nothing that would raise suspicion. The vault was sealed. The key was gone. The man who had demanded it still had no idea the walls were inching in. He emerged from his office like a man fresh from closing a major deal, not one who had just set fire to his career. His voice carried across the room. He never learned the meaning of an indoor tone. Telling another manager how he was finally clearing out old clutter and uniting the team. The other man gave a polite, trapped laugh. I didn't need to look to know my boss was gesturing broadly, spinning the tale for maximum self-congratulation. I turned back to my monitor, opened the secure console one last time, and exported the audit log. It was barely a kilobyte, just a handful of lines, but each one unflinching. Deleted payroll master encryption file per manager instruction. Whether you were an entry-level tech or the CFO, those words left no room for doubt. I attached the file to another email to my personal account. No explanation, just a time-stamped fact that would soon be worth its weight in gold. A couple of clicks, a glance to confirm the attachment, and I sent it. Off the company's servers and into a space only I controlled. Then I powered down completely, no sleep mode, no glowing indicators, no hum of the fan. Silence. I sat there as the afterimage of the screen faded, the air heavy like the stillness before a storm, when no one else senses the shift. Down the hall, I could hear him still talking about modernizing the department, unaware the system was now an immaculate, useless shell, ticking away, but incapable of moving a cent come payday. It was almost poetic. The man who believed he was streamlining had, instead, barricaded all the exits. I glanced toward the window. The parking lot glowed under midday sun. A few people strolled to their cars unaware. Inside, the usual rhythm persisted. Phones ringing, printers chattering, bursts of laughter. Everything appeared normal, which made the truth cut sharper. This wasn't just payback, nor merely about years of slights and stolen credit. Though there were plenty. It was the satisfaction of watching a man dig his own grave while smiling, never realizing the handle of the shovel bore my fingerprints. I leaned back, hands loosely folded, content to wait. Time was now working for me. In a few hours, the machine would choke, and the first to notice would be the ones with the most to lose. My part was over. His part was about to begin. From somewhere nearby came the squeak of the break room door, and the hiss of the coffee machine. He was probably dumping in extra sugar, savoring what he thought was a victory. I almost wished I could see his face later when he learned the price. Almost. His voice grew louder before I saw him, confidence riding the caffeine rush. Mid-sentence, the sound faltered. His steps hesitated, like he'd spotted a snake curled on his desk. The head of HR stood there, arms folded razor-tight. Beside her was the CFO, tall and composed, exuding the kind of quiet authority that didn't need to raise its voice. Today, though, his complexion had the burnished tone of copper foil, and his jaw was set so tight it could have cracked enamel. "Morning," my boss greeted, even though the day was well past that point. He forced a grin, but it went unanswered. The CFO stayed rooted in place, fixing my boss with an unwavering stare, as if weighing whether to start the discussion here or wait for the privacy of four walls. From my seat, I had a perfect side angle of the entire exchange. I didn't turn, didn't lean, just let it unfold in my peripheral vision while my gaze stayed on the blank glow of my laptop screen. But inside I felt it, that subtle, electric shift in a room when power changes hands without a single word. My boss wasn't in control anymore. He'd stumbled into a meeting he didn't know he was already in. "Can we talk in your office?" the HR director said. More statement than request, already walking toward the glass-walled corner he loved to brag about. The CFO followed, hands in pockets, shoulders tight, and my boss trailed them like a schoolboy sent to the principal. I knew then the first domino had fallen harder than I'd even dared hope. By now they'd have seen the audit log, noticed the payroll key was gone, and started to grasp what that meant. But from the CFO's pale, rigid expression, I could tell it wasn't just annoyance. It was concern. Payroll wasn't some abstract, next month problem. Payroll was tomorrow. A couple of co-workers looked up as the trio passed, then quickly buried themselves back in their monitors, sensing something was off. The usual office murmur was still there, but thinner, sharper, like the split second before a glass tips off the edge. My boss shut the office door behind them, blinds shifting just enough for me to catch silhouettes. The CFO spoke the most, HR off to the side, arms folded. My boss's hands were raised in that half-shrugged defense, no doubt trying to spin it as a harmless misunderstanding or some proactive cleanup effort. But here's the thing about erasing a payroll master key, there's no benign spin. Either you don't know what it is, making you incompetent, or you know exactly what it is and deleted it anyway, making you dangerous. Both end careers. I leaned back, stretching to release the tension in my shoulders. It wasn't gloating, it was alignment. The quiet satisfaction of watching reality shift, so the truth became the only thing in the room that mattered. From the corner of my vision, I saw the CFO motion toward the door, and the three emerged. My boss's face was tighter now, smirk gone. Eyes scanning to see who might be watching. His gaze flicked toward me for the briefest moment, but I gave him nothing. The same neutral mask I'd worn when he gave me the order. He passed in silence, but the weight in that silence was heavier than any remark he could have made. Somewhere inside, he had to feel it, that cold edge of realization that things were wrong, and about to get worse. They didn't even make it all the way back to his desk before the first break in the air came. The CFO stopped just short, turned to him fully, and asked in an even, almost casual tone, "Where is the payroll key file?" For a heartbeat, my boss just blinked, as if someone had asked about misplaced sunglasses. Then his brows knitted, mouth tightening. "What payroll key file?" he said, pitching his voice in that fake confusion people use when they're buying time. The CFO didn't look away. The encryption key that unlocks the payroll system. My boss shifted on his feet, the old defensive smirk creeping back. "Oh, that thing? Obsolete. I told it to get cleaned up this morning, just old clutter." The CFO cut in with a small shake of his head, as though swatting the words aside. "Let me be perfectly clear," he said, voice low but firm. "Without that file, payroll cannot be processed for anyone. Not tomorrow, not next week, not until it's rebuilt. And rebuilding isn't just hitting restore. It takes weeks, and compliance has to approve every step." I didn't move, but in the corner of my eye I saw it. The slight drop of my boss's shoulders, that first crack where reality seeped past his ego. Still, he clung to the bluff. "Well, surely there's a backup somewhere," he said, hands spread like it was obvious. "There isn't," the CFO said. His tone stayed calm, but each word carried the slow precision of someone narrowing their gaze. "For security reasons, the master key isn't stored in the cloud, duplicated on any external drives, or backed up anywhere outside the secure local system. That's the law, something you'd know if you'd ever read the compliance protocols." The air in the office shifted, a quiet heaviness settling in. Conversations at nearby desks slowed, voices lowering as people began to sense the tension radiating from our corner. My boss looked around, probably realizing that whatever was happening here wouldn't stay behind closed doors. Inside, I was savoring the moment, keeping my face relaxed and my posture casual. To anyone glancing my way, I was just scrolling through my inbox. But every measured pause, every carefully chosen word felt like sipping the finest whiskey. The CFO stepped closer, dropping his voice just enough to make me lean in to catch it. "We have 2,000 employees expecting pay tomorrow. Direct deposits, paper checks, contractor transfers. All of them rely on that key. So let's try this again. Where is it?" "I told you," my boss said, his voice sharpening. "I had it deleted. Part of the cleanup initiative." And there it was, the statement in plain, unvarnished terms. No vague phrasing, no softening. Just the admission, worded exactly as it would appear in meeting notes, HR reports, and the inevitable email chain. The CFO's expression flattened. "Then you've just created a company-wide payroll crisis," he said, each word striking like a hammer on steel. By now, HR, IT, and finance staff had started to gather. The CFO didn't waste time. He gestured to an IT lead who was clearly already briefed. Within seconds, 2 more techs were at my boss's desk, terminals open, scanning every storage path they could think of. It was like watching firefighters break down doors in a building already reduced to ashes. The first tech checked standard backups, local mirrors, scheduled snapshots, nothing. The second looked in the compliance vault, but the access log confirmed what I already knew. The master payroll key had never been kept there. By law, it couldn't be. Payroll regulations demanded there be only one active instance, existing in a single location. Lose it, and you start over from scratch. By design. Check the offsite archive, my boss suggested too quickly, as though guessing a door before the walls closed in. There is no offsite archive for the key, one tech said flatly, not even looking up. His voice was steady but edged with the awareness that this wasn't a routine fix. That would be a compliance violation. Something you'd know if you'd read the system specs. I sat with my hands loosely folded on the desk, breathing evenly. On the outside, pure professional detachment. On the inside, I felt each knot there and directories empty, as another deliberate turn of the screw. The HR director had pulled up a chair, jotting notes in tidy, deliberate strokes, the kind of handwriting that might just as easily be drafting a resignation letter. The CFO stood with arms crossed, eyes locked on my boss as if watching a confession slowly assemble itself. Check the dev server, my boss snapped, his composure fraying. Even if it's there, it won't work, another tech replied, finally meeting his gaze. Encryption is bound to the active key's unique signature. You can't just copy and paste it. It's not a password, it's a cryptographic handshake between the key and the payroll processor. I lowered my eyes to the keyboard, hiding the faintest curve of a smile, because here was the unspoken truth. My employment contract, the one he'd never bothered to read, required my written consent to regenerate that encryption protocol. It was a safeguard the company had put in place years ago after a near disaster with a contractor, buried in dry legal language but ironclad, which meant no matter when they tried to rebuild the key, today, tomorrow, next week, they'd need my signature. And I had no intention of giving it away for free. The IT crew kept at it, running through a string of increasingly frantic possibilities. Old code archives, temporary directories, even a few long-forgotten external drives pulled from storage. Every time, the result was the same. Nothing there, wrong format, or completely useless. The mood in the room shifted from tense urgency to grim resignation. Even those without the technical knowledge could read the posture and expressions. My boss hovered behind them, craning his neck toward screens and offering half-baked ideas, but the focus had already moved, now fixed on the CFO, HR, and the growing awareness that this was no minor hiccup. It was a financial and legal landmine, set to detonate in under 24 hours. I stayed still, silent, letting the pressure coil tighter, knowing that every tick of the clock made the trap harder to undo. The snare was set. All it needed was one public snap. The search murmurs died when the CFO's phone buzzed. He glanced down, answered, exchanged a few clipped words I couldn't make out, then hung up. His eyes landed on my boss. The CEO's on his way. The air in the room shifted, like a sudden drop in barometric pressure. People straightened in their seats. The IT lead froze mid-keystroke. Even HR's pen stopped above the paper. My boss tried to keep a cool facade, but his throat worked twice in a nervous swallow. When the CEO arrived, he skipped greetings. He came in like someone walking straight into a blaze they'd been warned about too late. Explain, he said low and sharp. Why am I hearing that tomorrow's payroll is at risk? His gaze locked on the CFO, then flicked to my boss. Talk. My boss jumped in, leaning on his usual trick, rapid speech packed with partial truths. There was some legacy file clutter I told IT to clean this morning. Apparently, it might have been linked to older system. Older system functions? The CFO cut in louder now. That was the encryption key for payroll. Without it, nothing runs. The CEO's stare sharpened. True. My boss hesitated just long enough for silence to answer. Technically, yes, but there must be a backup. There isn't, the CFO snapped, slicing him off. Compliance protocols. You know this. Without even looking at my boss, he turned to the IT lead. Show him. A pale rectangle of light filled the wall from the projector. A few keystrokes later, the audit log appeared. Timestamps scrolled until one line sat dead center, highlighted. Deleted payroll master encryption file per manager instruction. The CEO read it once. Then again. Per manager instruction, he repeated. Eyes fixed on my boss. You gave that order. My boss's mouth worked. Open, close, open again. It was misrepresented to me, he finally said. A hint of desperation creeping in. No one misrepresents something like that. The CFO said, voice colder now. You don't rip out the foundation of a system you barely understand and act shocked when it crumbles. From my seat, I looked at the glowing words on the wall. Face unreadable, pulse steady. This was the moment I'd waited for. The trap springing shut, in full view of the only people whose judgment mattered. Maybe the file was mislabeled. My boss tried again. The CEO stepped forward, planting a hand on the table, leaning in just enough to close the distance. Don't insult us. Your name is on the order. Your voice is in the meeting log. And your decision is about to cost this company 2,000 paychecks, and whatever legal mess follows. The silence after was thick. My boss's shoulders sagged, the first crack in his armor. The evidence wasn't whispered in a back room anymore. It was corporate record. The CFO spoke with surgical precision. So, each word deliberate. You ordered the deletion of the one irreplaceable file for tomorrow's payroll. Why? The question hit like a silent thunderclap. Every eye swung to my boss. The CEO's expression was unreadable. HR's pen hovered motionless. The IT lead didn't move. Even the AC seemed to hush. My boss's lips parted, but no sound came. The swagger, the smirks, the polished spin gone. His face drained pale under the fluorescence. Why? The CFO asked again, softer this time, making it worse. I thought, his voice cracked. I thought it was obsolete. No one told me. No one needs to tell you not to pull the supports out from under the system you oversee. The CEO cut in, voice sharp as glass. It's your job to know. HR slid her notepad aside, folding her hands. Given the immediate operational impact and the nature of this decision, she said evenly, we'll need to discuss your role privately. She didn't look at me, but the meaning was obvious. You're finished. The CFO leaned back, arms crossed, eyes on my boss as though expecting him to combust on the spot. We're now facing a payroll freeze because of your uninformed decision. That's not bad leadership. That's liability. The CEO didn't bother adding anything. Just a small nod toward HR. She rose. Let's step into the other room. My boss glanced around, searching for a lifeline that wasn't there. Shoulders bent, he followed her out. 2 security staff stood waiting. They didn't grab him, didn't speak, just walked beside him until the conference doors shut. Quiet but final. Everyone understood. For a beat, the room stayed still. Then the CEO looked at me for the first time. You know how to fix this? It wasn't a question. I met his gaze, steady. On my terms. He didn't blink. Just gave a single nod, like a man who knew exactly what it cost to win a game no one else could. Around us, people glanced between him and me, sensing the shift but saying nothing. I leaned back, letting the weight of it settle. The man who thought he could take my work was gone. No badge, no seat. And I was still here. The only one who could open the vault. The only one who could get 2,000 people paid. Justice, I realized, doesn't always roar. Sometimes it's just the sound of a door closing behind you, leaving you at the head of the table. You're the real MVPs of the office jungle. Thanks for watching. Smash that subscribe button, or the coffee pot might just forget your next brew.